Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are continuing our study of the Olivet Discourse. This is video number 410, I do believe, if memory serves me correctly. And we have been focusing over the last several weeks, a couple of months actually, on Matthew 25, 1 to 13, where Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like, and it's like the coming of the Son of Man for the wedding, 5 wise, 5 foolish virgins. And I've been sharing with you how this entire motif, the subject, the doctrine of the coming of the Lord for the wedding, is one that is completely taken out of its place by most commentators. Most commentators put this coming of the Lord for the wedding at the end of the Christian age, when the Lord supposedly comes to marry the church. Now, I'm going to be sharing with you an absolutely humongous contradiction in the futurist eschatologies as we continue this study. So you'll be looking for that. But, historical and traditional eschatologies, that of the amillennial, which is the view that I was raised in, fifth generation member of the amillennial world, as well as the postmillennial world, they put the wedding at the end of time. They put the wedding at the end of the Christian age. Now, I want you to think about this for just a moment. And again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in depth. They put the wedding at the end of the new covenant age. But wait a minute, folks, and this is basically a teaser for later. If the wedding is not until the end of the new covenant age, then the new covenant, which is the new covenant marriage contract, comes to an end at the coming of the Lord for the wedding. Oh, wait a minute. The coming of the Lord for the wedding ought to be the full consummation and perfection of the new covenant. Instead, futurist eschatologies, those who put the wedding of Christ at the end of the Christian age, they have the new covenant ending. Now, they like to say, oh, no, the new covenant never ends. Well, yeah, it does according to your view. So anyway, be looking for that discussion. I'm not going to guarantee it this week, but it's coming. So what I've been sharing with you is, first of all, that the entire subject of the coming of the Lord for the wedding is based upon, taken from God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. Now, purely and simply, that means this. If the Lord has not come for the wedding, then Israel remains God's old covenant people. They remain God's covenant people, and it remains true that the old covenant remains as God's covenant with Israel. Just this morning, I was reading a little bit from a PDF that was sent to me about the two doctrine theory, and the bifurcation between Israel and the church. And the view of the dispensational world that says, well, you know, and John Hagee, of course, is on record, the Jews do not need Jesus Christ. They have the Abrahamic covenant. So there is the view out there. You have the Jews with their covenant. You have Christians with our covenant. Sorry, that's as wrong can be. God was married to Israel. Israel committed spiritual adultery, Hosea chapter 2, verses 1 and following. God wrote her a bill of divorcement. God put her away. But he promised that in the last days, watch this, he would make a new covenant with her and would betroth her again forever. And it's in that marriage, it is in that new covenant into which all nations are invited to walk. So when you postulate that the marriage is off here in the future sometime, then you're postulating that the new covenant is out there in the future. Or you're postulating, well, yes, a marriage contract has been initialized and the Lord is betrothed to the church, but he's not currently married to the church. Oh, what about his relationship with Israel? Has God fulfilled all of his promises to Old Covenant Israel? You know, just this morning, I was discussing some of this on Facebook. And there's a guy there, he's a preacher. He likes to appear on the scene and take a bunch of pot shots at me, mostly insults, to be honest about it. And a matter of fact, this morning, as I read his comments, there were probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 or more comments, all of which were purely insults. They were slanders, okay? Not one single thing about theology, not one single thing about the issues of theology. Here's what's ironic, which I pointed out and I reposted. He had literally disappeared from a previous discussion which we had been engaged in a couple of months ago. I think it's a couple of months ago. And in that discussion, I asked this gentleman, that's to be kind, was God through with Old Covenant Israel at the cross? Was God through with the Old Covenant at the cross? If God was through with Old Covenant Israel and the Old Law at the cross, how can it be that Paul, writing years after the cross, said that his hope of the resurrection, which, by the way, don't forget, the resurrection is the time of the marriage of Matthew 25, 1 to 13. Hosea chapter 5 through chapter 6, God was going to remarry Israel at his coming after he had departed. So I asked this gentleman, number one, if God was through with Israel at the cross, if God was through with the Old Covenant at the cross, and if that was true, how can it be true that Paul, writing years and years after the cross, said that his hope of the resurrection was taken from the law, Moses, and the prophets? Acts 24, 14 and following. Because after all, you see, Jesus said, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law, which is technically the law and the prophets, until it's all fulfilled. Not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law until it's all fulfilled. Paul said his doctrine and his hope of the resurrection was found where? In the law. Oh, and the prophets. Now, by the way, very quick digression, which is not really a digression. The doctrine of the resurrection is found in the law. And in the law, the resurrection was anticipated and foreshadowed and found in typological form in Israel's last 3 feast days. Now, I've also asked this individual and others as well, if God was through at the cross, then since Paul said in Colossians 2, 16 and 17, let no man judge you in respect of new moon, of feast day, and Sabbaths, which are, that's in the present active in the Greek, a shadow of the good things that are about to come. Okay, now watch. In Israel's typological feast days, the wedding is associated with Rosh Hashanah as well as Sukkot. Mostly Rosh Hashanah, but that's, not a huge delineation. Okay, so the wedding of Matthew 25, 1 to 13, when God would remarry Israel, when the new covenant would be fully consummated, in fulfillment of God's old covenant promises found in the law. Now, Exodus chapter 23, which everyone will admit was the law, the wedding was foreshadowed in Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. So, Jesus said, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law until it is all, not some of it, not even most of it, until it is all fulfilled. Until what is fulfilled? The law. The law was the feast days of Exodus 23, included the feast days. You know, when Jesus said, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law until it's all fulfilled, I want to tell you what. The feast days were an awful lot of jots and tittles. And again, they foreshadowed the wedding, the judgment, the resurrection. Futurist eschatologies say the wedding is yet future. Well, that means Israel's feast days are not fulfilled. Futurists say the resurrection is not fulfilled. That means the law of Exodus 23 and the feast days is not fulfilled. Futurists say the judgment and the coming of the Lord has not been fulfilled. That means that Exodus 23 and Israel's feast days are not fulfilled. So let me say this one more time. Paul said his hope of the resurrection of the just and of the unjust was from the law and the prophets. Jesus said not one jot, not one tittle would pass from the law and the prophets until it was all fulfilled. Therefore, until the wedding, which is at the resurrection, which is at the judgment, until the wedding of Matthew 25, 1 to 13 would take place, or is to take place, not one jot and not one tittle shall pass from the old law, period. And you know, I have posted my question that I posted again to this gentleman this morning. I posted that on one Facebook discussion after another, asking the opponents of covenant eschatology, please answer the question. In 99.9% of the cases, they completely and totally ignore the question. Now, on tomorrow's tomorrow's video, we're going to look closer at the wedding. You know, I've shared with you some from Revelation already. So we're going to go to the book of Revelation, and we're going to talk about the wedding in Revelation and where the apocalypse puts that wedding. The evidence is powerful, it is explicit, it is overwhelming if our hearts are open to accept it. So you don't want to miss that. Now, I forgot to give you the April book special the other day. So, for the month of April 2020, U.S. orders only. Okay, my book on the resurrection of Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, fulfilled or future. Now, I want to tell you what, folks, I'm unaware of any other book that even comes close to the material that you will find in this book. It is literally unparalleled and unprecedented. This book normally sells for $23.95. And for the very first time on one of our book specials, I'm offering a book, a fantastic book by my friend Sam Dawson, Essays on Eschatology. This book covers an incredible range of subjects, including the importance of the Old Testament, what we've been talking about on today's video, the timing of the coming of the Lord, the judgment, the resurrection, the atonement. He even has a special study in here on hell. I'm still working my way through that one. Okay? Okay, but I'm telling you, by the way, he has an in-depth study of 1 Corinthians chapter 15 in this book. So, this book is normally $24.95. Now let me get my scratch pad out here, okay? This book is normally $24.95 plus $4.95 shipping. My Daniel book is normally $23.95 plus $4.95 shipping. So normally that would cost you $57.80. If you ordered them separately, paid separate shipping, all right? For the month of April 2021, U.S. orders only, you get both books, post-paid, total price, $37.50. So that's going to save you a solid $20. If you do not have these books in your library, you are missing out on a wealth of information that will equip you to understand God's scheme of eschatology. Oh, so go to my website. The banner may not be up yet, but it will be. It will be, yeah, extremely shortly. It'll be there. Okay. So take advantage of April special. Save yourself $20. Sam Dawson, Essays on Eschatology, the Resurrection of Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, Future or Fulfilled. Okay. Thanks for joining me for this morning's morning musings. I do appreciate it. I'll see you on the flip side.